To raise 300 million, you're going to have to find one broad-based tax that will bring in approximately 200 million. And from there, you might have to maybe broaden the base of the sales tax to include some services, which could bring in another 60 to 70 million. The cigarette tax itself would bring in approximately 80 million, depending on whether you go 4 cents or 5 cents on a package. These are going to be some of the alternatives. I don't know what will be the most accepted, but I think you're going to have to find a broad-based tax and bring in roughly 200 million to spring from to begin with, and this could be either eliminating the food as an exemption from the sales tax or increasing the sales tax by ½ cent.
How about some new taxes on business?
The governor also had this in each one of his 5 recommendations, and they range all the way from natural gas, also to a corporate income tax, and franchise tax.
Would you expect
I would say, I don't want to leave your question there, I would say that from the makeup of the Texas House, I think the corporate income tax will be ruled out on the initial run.
We're supporting this because we feel that we must give some semblance of human dignity to the life of the people who need the small amount of support which we give them. And I think particularly you must understand that 80% of all our money goes to the needy aged, average age 73 years of age. And while there are additional funds provided under this amendment, they amount to about 20%, and they go to needy children who are too young to work, needy blind, and needy disabled.
Recent studies by the Texas Highway Department and by the Texas Alcohol and Narcotics Education Group here in Dallas have shown that the biggest part of this problem is caused by non-returnable cans and non-returnable bottles. In fact, 90% of this part of the problem is caused by non-returnable beer cans and bottles. I think on the average mile of Texas highway, for instance, there are something like 1,400 non-returnable cans and bottles found by both the Texas Highway Department and by TAME. Only 30 of these bottles were returnable. Glass doesn't deteriorate, and aluminum cans don't rust away, and they'll be with us forever. And they're going to become quite a problem to our civilization if we don't figure out a way to discourage their use.
What would you say the chances are of the passage of this bill? I would say unless the public becomes greatly aroused by the litter alongside the highways, then the chances of passage is practically none. But I think if people will begin to look out their windows along the highway and get disturbed about something I believe they should be disturbed about, then it will pass if the people become concerned. I've talked to several biologists from the University of Texas and from other colleges, and they're greatly disturbed about the manufacture of cans and bottles that are going to be with us from now on unless they're carried back into the factories and reproduced into other bottles. If just allowing them to stay there, the biologists have told me that we're going to have tremendous environmental problem in 10 or 20 years.
Mr. Coffey, what did today's Texas Supreme Court ruling on Sunday accomplish?
The ruling by the Supreme Court opened the door for a further look at their being in violation with the antitrust laws of the state of Texas.
Now, this would put them in violation of a felony, is that correct?
That's correct.
I understand there's also a case to be tried before the Supreme Court. I think it came out of San Antonio with regard to the Sunday closing law. Now, supposing that this law is upheld by the Supreme Court in that case, does that also put Sunday Co. in violation of that?
They are conceivably in violation of both the felony of antitrust, in violation of antitrust laws, and the misdemeanor Sunday closing.
Here for University. It may look like another quaint antique shop, but in reality, and rather amazingly, this little structure has more inhabitants than the Dallas Hilton and Statler hotels combined. Mrs. Jack McGaughty calls it her B Hotel, and out in Kleberg, it's the talk of town. What is that bee doing up there? It looks like it's carrying another one off.
This one is carrying a dead bee out. They don't let the dead ones stay, and if they're lazy, they get them out. They don't if they're not workers.
And what about this group over here?
See all these they look like mountains. Well, they're so thick now you can't see, but they live under there, and they go. But all this right here is new honey that they're making. And up here is where they're sealing it to the glass, where we just put the glass in a couple of months ago.
Do you intend to rob this hive when the honey's ready?
Yes, there's a man that's a professional bee man, and he's going to rob them. They fixed this glass, or made this glass with screws so they could take the screws out and rob the bees. It's really something. I've never seen bees except out in the field in little boxes.
Tommy Ayers, Channel 8 News in Kleberg.
I want to make it clear to everyone that no one is calling for a witch hunt. The purpose for which we're gathered here is not an effort to make a lot of black headlines. It's not an effort to attempt to punish an industry which is one of the building blocks of this state's economy. Here then in brief is my idea of why we're here, and here in brief is my idea of why this committee actually exists in the first place. The people of our state are disturbed about automobile insurance rate increases. Secondly, if the rate increases are not absolutely essential, they should not be made. Third, if they are essential, the people of Texas deserve to know the details as to why the insurance rate increases are essential. And last, and perhaps the most important, if there are actions that we can take or actions that we can even suggest to lower insurance rates or to make us all understand why they cannot be lowered,
no time has been set. Everyone is getting their Form 52s, which is a Federal Aviation Administration form to resign. They're filling them out and signing them and waiting to see what the negotiations bring.
So the resignations will be pending the negotiations outcome?
Yes.
What would be the effect, if they do resign, on air traffic?
There would be no air traffic. You would have a few planes from general aviation that would fly, your 4-seaters, your 6-seaters, a few 8s and 10s. None of the airlines would be flying. None of your corporate aircraft would be flying at all.
Would there be others in the aviation field that would join this effort? The pilots?
Well, the pilots have indicated, and it was an unofficial indication, that if as many as go out as we're anticipating are going out, there's no way that they can fly or would fly.
How did this concept come into being?
Jerry, we've determined that a tremendous amount of the expansion in Texas, the number of jobs created, are done by the expansion of local industry. Our basic program has been one of getting out-of-state firms to locate in Texas. But here's a big potential and one that needs to be looked after, and so we've decided to try and come up with some kind of a program to tell the story to local industry that, golly, we appreciate you, that we're happy you're here. We hope if you're going to expand, that you're going to expand here in our community, or at least in Texas, and what can we do to help you? We have not had this kind of a program before. This is a new pilot project.
How did you select Fort Worth?
Well, for two basic reasons. First, Fort Worth has the largest concentration of industrial employment of any county in the state of Texas. And the second, we have a very fine working relationship with the Chamber of Commerce people in Fort Worth, Ernie Larmer and Bill Shelton. Bill used to be on our industrial commission. So we had an already existing line of good communications with the leadership people in the community.
As a result of the threat to quit by the PATCO members, Deputy Regional FAA Director Al Coulter agreed to meet newsmen. He said he had no statement to make, but he'd be willing to answer whatever questions they might choose to put to him.
If the FAA employees, the air controllers, do indeed resign as they have threatened to do, what will the government do then?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I personally do not believe that this is going to come about the way that Mr. Hartson has indicated, or other statements that have appeared in the press. When we talk to these people, they have told us that they've called us at home at night with their own money to pay for the telephone, to tell us, and they've told their supervisors, and they tell people that visit the facilities that they do not like the tactics that PATCO is doing, the way they're doing business, and that they will have nothing to do with this. Many of them have said they're going to resign. So I just, from what was told to us, we just do not believe this is going to happen.
The PATCO members had said that the FAA was now refusing to take out their membership dues, and that's what they were mad about. Mr. Coulter said, indeed, the FAA will no longer take out the dues because the PATCO people have violated an agreement with the FAA, but he said it was inconceivable to him that they would even consider resigning jobs that pay so much money over such a small item. I talked with a number of FAA officials, and some of them said that in their opinion, the real reason behind it all was that since PATCO is a professional organization but has taken a union stance, and since it does not have the right to strike, and since it collects $6 from every member every pay period, they felt they had to do something spectacular to make people continue to feel it was worthwhile to belong to PATCO, and they think that's what it's all about. Jerry Taff, Channel 8 News, Fort Worth.
On August 5th, some 40,000 Dallas County voters are expected to turn out for an election. They will vote on 9 state constitutional amendments, among them a Texas water plan and a possible new ceiling for state welfare spending. As in other off-year amendment elections, a lot of people are expected to stay at home, and so will these controversial punch card voting devices, which caused such an emotional stir during the last general election. We talked with County Clerk Tom Ellis about it.
For this election, August the 5th, the upright automatic voting machine will be used for the constitutional amendments.
Who decides on the type and number of machines to be used in an election?
The election board recommends to the Commissioner's Court the type of machine to be used for all elections held by the county.
What kind of voter turnout is anticipated for this August 5th election?
I'm sticking my neck way out and hoping that we'll have as many as 40 or 45,000. Of course, we'd like to have more than that, but I think that if we get that many, we'll have a good election.
In this warehouse are stored more than 1,800 punch card voting devices recently purchased by the county. Strangely enough, not even the most rabid proponents of the devices seem too disturbed about the fact they won't be used in the upcoming election. Several explanations have been offered for the silence. According to one version, the manufacturers of the punch card devices are on the verge of introducing a new improvement to their machine and do not want to push its use until that new version is operational. One county official who worked very hard for the purchase of the punch card system says he's simply tired of the whole fuss. At any rate, some $250,000 worth of punch card voting devices will sit idle here in this warehouse on August 5th, and suddenly nobody seems to care. Tommy Ayers for Channel 8 News.
Well, Rosser, surely the success of Apollo 11 will help money. We do have a very serious money problem, and our space program is expensive. I think it's worth it, and I think in the long run we'd be glad we spent that money. But as everybody knows, we've got some money problems in our country, so I think we'll continue to have money problems with space.
You think that the other manned missions to the moon will get off okay? I mean, the money will be provided for them?
Yes, most of the money is provided for them, Rosser, but beyond that, there isn't money provided. And so many of the items that we use, and like in the big Saturn V, takes about 4 to 5 years to build them. So what money we appropriate today, this year, in space will determine the kind of a space program we have 4 or 5 years from now. So I am disappointed that we didn't appropriate more this year than we did. Actually, to have a very progressive, good space program, we need about $4.7 billion. And this year we're only appropriating about 3.8. Of course, Rosser, I don't think the moon is really the important thing to consider. Like Lindbergh flying to Paris. Paris wasn't important, but his ability to fly there was. The same with the moon. The ability to fly there and live in that hostile environment of 250 degrees above zero and 250 degrees below, and then come back safely. That's the important part of it.
Arrangements have been made to pump and discharge the effluent into the nearest sanitary city sewer, and it'll be dumped by enclosed pipe. This arrangement will be in effect until the City of Dallas completes its extension of the Ledbetter sewer line to connect up with the Astro facility, which we are told could be 1 year or possibly 18 months, maybe sooner. Although the temporary measure will require additional expenditures by us, Gordon and B.R. McClendon, the principals in our organization, feel it is a small price indeed to restore the peace of mind to the interested people in the South Oak Cliff and Oak Cliff areas.
And one of the main reasons I'm sending her out of town is because I don't like for nobody. She's just a young lady, 14 years old, and I don't like for nobody to be touching her where she's not supposed to be touched. That's one. Equality. She says equality. Yes, we feel that we got equality, if that's what we want to call it. But with the majority of the Negroes in West Dallas, the Latin American people cannot go to school half of the time, and I've known some of the boys that are playing baseball in my team that will be going to junior high school next semester in September. They have already said, I am not going to school because of this problem. All right? That is one reason right there where you said equality. Sure, everybody feels here that we have equality, but we don't. We have police protection. Pardon for me for pointing at you. We got police protection. We got a lot of policemen in West Dallas. But what do? All they go to, oh, okay, settle down. Now, you go on home, go on about your business, and that's it. Everything's settled. Once in a while, you see somebody load up a couple of Negro boys, Mexican boys, or Anglo boys, and that's it. They get it all settled down. When I was going to school, after school, or when I was growing up, when I dropped out of school because of my own free will, police, the protection we used to get those days, that was what I call protection, because nobody told the police brutality, because it was the law in those days. Now I don't know what to call it, because a policeman is afraid to arrest or to take anybody without a whole bunch of Negro, a whole bunch of Mexicans, or a whole bunch of anything getting to them, if you understand what I mean.
Now, I went the long, long route, and I mean I'm from way back there when some of you young people don't know the differences that there were. Now, oh, it's just wonderful. We're being treated just fine, and everything is marvelous. But I went to school first. I graduated at SMU. I was one of the first ones that did that. I had to have a certificate, teacher certificate. I got that. Now, if you prepare yourself for these things, then you can talk and ask for the same rights that other people have.